Picture this. It's the year 1720, and the absolute smartest man in all of England makes a catastrophic financial mistake. We're talking about a genuine historical mystery here. A man who is undeniably brilliant, a true, literal genius by every possible definition. Yet he somehow managed to completely and utterly lose his entire fortune. So you gotta wonder, how does someone with that kind of unmatched intellect pull off something so financially disastrous? Well, the answer is gonna completely change how you view wealth.
You see, this wasn't just some wealthy aristocrat with too much time on his hands or a foolish gambler making a reckless bet. No, we're talking about the man who invented calculus, the guy who quite literally explained the laws of gravity to the entire world. Yep, Isaac Newton. So, Newton got into a stock called the South Sea Company early on. He actually made a small fortune and cashed out. Honestly, it was a remarkably smart move. But then, he just stood there. He watched the price keep climbing and climbing. He watched people around him, people he confidently considered far less intelligent than himself, getting richer by the day. And well, the fear of missing out just crept right in. So he jumped back in, right near the absolute top of the bubble.
Just months later, the whole bubble completely collapsed. Newton lost thousands. Actually, scratch that. It was the modern equivalent of millions of dollars. After this devastating blow, he famously lamented, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people." Man, that just perfectly hits the nail on the head, right? It brilliantly illustrates the core issue here. The smartest man alive, the genius who could literally map the stars, couldn't outthink his own emotional mind. Raw brain power simply wasn't enough to protect him from human nature.
Which brings us to a really uncomfortable truth. Intelligence and wealth, they are not the same skill. In fact, they are entirely different games. Intelligence is all about processing complex information incredibly fast. Solving intricate problems, mastering difficult subjects. Wealth building, on the other hand, is about controlling your behavior very, very slowly, often for decades, without flinching. And as it turns out, highly intelligent people are often way worse at that second one, simply because they've spent their whole lives being exclusively rewarded for the first. Let's dive into this contrast for a second. Picture a highly successful cardiologist. She has 30 years of rigorous training under her belt, makes $500,000 a year, and literally saves lives. But financially, her net worth is entirely flat. Every single dollar she earns is already spoken for. She's got the massive house that matches her prestigious title, the luxury car that matches the house, the lavish vacations. She looks incredibly successful, but she's just treading water. Now contrast her with Ronald Read. He was a janitor. He swept floors and worked at a gas station, living a completely unglamorous life. Yet when he died, he left behind an $8 million fortune built entirely through slow, boring index investing.
That massive gap between the high-flying doctor and the janitor, it isn't a fluke. It's exactly what we call the IQ-EQ gap. Intelligence, your IQ, measures how well you process information. But emotional intelligence, or EQ, specifically your financial behavior, is what actually builds wealth. We're talking about patience, humility, and absolute consistency. This gap is the exact reason why you see brilliant professionals like corporate lawyers and tech executives living paycheck to paycheck despite pulling in massive six-figure salaries. Their IQ is completely off the charts, but their financial EQ is severely lacking.
So to understand exactly why this happens, we need to break down 4 specific psychological money traps that are practically custom-built to sabotage smart people. We've got overconfidence, loss aversion, decision fatigue, and identity spending. Recognizing these traps is the absolutely crucial first step to avoiding them.
Let's start with trap number 1, overconfidence. Psychologists have found this fascinating quirk where the more capable someone is in their own high-level profession, the more likely they are to falsely assume that their expertise perfectly transfers over to investing. A brilliant surgeon who mastered the human body naturally assumes she can just master the stock market in a fraction of the time. But this overconfidence makes high IQ professionals trade way too much, diversify way too little, and ultimately completely underperform your everyday passive investor. Confidence in the operating room is a total necessity, but in the stock market, it's a massive liability.
And this overconfidence easily heeds right into our second trap, loss aversion. This is a concept famously documented by psychologists Kahneman and Tversky, and it reveals that our human brains simply do not treat gains and losses equally. Gaining $100 feels pretty good, sure, but losing $100, that feels roughly twice as bad. This isn't some weird personality flaw. It is literal human wiring, and it affects absolutely everyone, even those walking around with genius-level IQs.
The practical result of this loss aversion is financially brutal. Because losing feels so incredibly painful, incredibly smart people will hold on to losing investments for way too long. They're just desperately hoping to avoid the pain of admitting they were wrong. At the exact same time, they'll sell their winning investments far too early just to lock in that good feeling of a win. This right here is exactly how fortunes are drained in slow motion. It's almost never one massive catastrophic error. It's 1,000 small, emotionally logical mistakes that just slowly bleed a portfolio dry.
Then there's trap 3, decision fatigue. This one is the silent portfolio killer. The exact same brilliance that earns a high achiever their massive income also completely exhausts the willpower they need to protect it. Picture that exhausted surgeon again. She makes 40 high-stakes, literal life-or-death decisions before she even takes her lunch break. By the time 9 o'clock at night rolls around, she has absolutely zero discipline left for her personal investment app or budgeting spreadsheet.
So the really crucial point here is that by the time these high achievers finally sit down to look at their finances, their cognitive tank is running on fumes. And when your willpower is empty, your brain just defaults to the easiest, most emotional choice available. You buy the expensive thing because, hey, you earned it. Or you make a rash portfolio change because you just don't have the mental energy to think it through properly.
Finally, we have trap 4, identity spending. This is the quietest and honestly perhaps the most dangerous trap of the whole bunch. For many high achievers, money stops being a useful tool to buy freedom and instead becomes a scoreboard to prove their success. As financial writer Morgan Housel points out, that luxury car isn't really bought for reliable transportation. It's bought with the hope that other people will look at you differently when you drive it. And intelligent people, they are exceptionally good at building these airtight, rational-sounding arguments to justify spending that is, at its very core, entirely emotional.
So what does this all mean? Ultimately, wealth is not a knowledge problem. It is a behavior problem wearing a knowledge costume. The smartest person in the room is very rarely the financial winner. The person who actually wins the wealth game is simply the most behaviorally consistent person in the room. They are the ones who can control their impulses, stay the course, and gracefully avoid all those emotional pitfalls we just covered.
As the legendary investor Charlie Munger famously put it, it's not brilliance that builds fortunes. It's the absence of stupidity sustained for a very long time. I just love that. It perfectly sums up the philosophy of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. A calm temperament, patience, and humility will always outperform raw, unbridled intellect over a long enough timeline. You really don't need to be brilliant. You just need to be disciplined.
All right, so how do we actually break this pattern? Because smart people don't need more information. They need structure that entirely removes emotion from the equation. So here are 4 actionable steps to do exactly that. Automate your savings, write your rules before a crisis hits, separate your identity from your money, and always default to bored.
Rule number 1, automate everything before your brilliant brain can talk you out of it. Let's make this your ultimate financial tool. Money that is automatically moved into savings and investment accounts the exact second your paycheck hits never actually has to survive a moment of temptation. If you don't see it, you can't emotionally justify spending it. Automation is quite literally the absolute best defense against decision fatigue.
Rule number 2, write your financial rules down before a crash happens, not during one. You need to decide exactly what you will do during a 30% market drop right now on a calm, sunny afternoon. Because let me assure you, the version of you sitting in the middle of a terrifying market panic is absolutely not the version of you that should be making long-term financial calls. Write the rules when you're calm and blindly follow them when you're panicking.
Rule number 3, you must rigorously separate your identity from your net worth. Look, you are not a genius if your portfolio goes up this month, and you are not a failure if it goes down. The very moment your money becomes a referendum on your self-worth, you will inevitably start making irrational decisions to protect your fragile ego instead of actually protecting your financial future.
And finally, Rule 4, default to boring. Seriously, embrace the unglamorous, repetitive strategy. Consistent saving into broad index funds, keeping a diversified portfolio, and just waiting. It doesn't make for a thrilling story at a dinner party, but it is without exception the true, proven path to long-term wealth. Boring investing is beautiful investing.
Which brings our explainer full circle, right back to Isaac Newton. He went on to do incredible things, but he never fully recovered from that one massive financial wound. And you know, his real tragedy wasn't just losing the money. It was the humbling realization that his raw, unmatched brilliance offered absolutely no defense against human emotion. For one afternoon, the smartest man on earth realized he was exactly as flawed and human as everyone else.
So, I'm going to leave you with this question to chew on. Are you letting your intellect get in the way of your wealth? Remember, wealth was never a reward for being the smartest person in the room. It has always been a reward for being the calmest. If this explainer helped you spot a trap you've been falling into, I highly encourage you to subscribe to Nick Wealth, where we dive into the fascinating psychology of money every single week. Take a step back,